Today on the Big Show, we're hanging out with Joe Schwarz talking about the St. Louis Cardinals, baby. Plus, we'll talk about whether Major League Baseball should implement a pitch clock. I kid you not. And finally, we'll talk to Joe about his Indiana Pacers and if they're going to make it to the NBA Finals. Let's do it.
Where's my snare?
I got it right here, buddy boy. Hey, it's your good friend, it's your pal, it's your compadre, it's TC, everybody. How you doing? What's going on the Big Show today? Well, first off, a little attribution to the great Eminem. That is cleaning out my closet. Joe's a big fan of Eminem, so I said to him before the show, I said, hey, Joe, what do you want me to play for you to open the show today? And he says, hey, for me, it's all about Eminem. And I love everybody, but I do love Eminem. Berserk, great song. Little Billy Squire working in that. Without Me, I love that with Dr. Dre. Tons of great Eminem stuff out there. And so, yeah, wanted to give a little attribution to the great Eminem. Welcome to the Big Show. Of course, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday talking baseball, baby. I love myself some baseball. And for me, it's all about having a laugh, making some new friends like Joe today, and not being afraid to call the ridiculous in sports ridiculous, because you know there's a lot of people out there in the world, whether it's the sports world or even Major League Baseball themselves or baseball players or even the fans who are walking around with broomsticks up their keisters. No. Not allowed here on the Big Show. We're all about old school, man, having some fun, but also embracing 2014. Speaking of embracing, make sure you swing on by Sportsnaut.com. It's the unfiltered sports juggernaut. Our writers there at Sportsnaut, which is sports, as in, well, sports, and not as in you're the juggernaut, baby. Our writers, they ain't pulling any punches. They're posting it, making it sexy on a daily basis. Check it out. I'm sure you're going to dig on it, man. And make sure you follow us, subscribe via RSS, or follow Sportsnaut on Facebook or on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter. It's HeyTC. That's it. Hey, as in, hey, that's a good-looking guy over there. And, yeah, they must be talking about Joe. They're certainly not talking about me. And then T is in tits and C is in cleavage, because as Howard Hughes said in The Aviator, who doesn't love tits? Exactly. Finally, before we get to Joe, I got to ask, if you're listening to the show for the first time, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a shot. Maybe after a couple shows, you're like, hey, yeah, TC gets it, man. I dig this show. I'm going to become a listener, and I'd appreciate that. Now, if you're already a listener, thank you so much, and I'd ask you a favor. Maybe you could tell a friend or a family member about the show. It would mean a lot to me, and I thank you in advance. So what's going on in the Big Show today? Well, we're talking to Joe Schwarz, who's currently a fifth-year pharmacy student. You know, Joe, I got to tell you something. I went to pharmacy school, too. I completed it in 2 months. What do you think of that?
I wish it was that easy.
I went to Upstairs Pharmacy School in Hollywood. It's on the corner of Vine and Wilshire there in Hollywood. And, it was Dr. Nick Riviera was my instructor. And, he put me through in 2 months.
Yeah, that would be a lot better than having to pay the amount that I have to pay to get done with it in 6 years.
You're a writer for SB Nation, specifically Viva Alberto's. Is that correct?
Yep.
Very nice.
Yep.
You can follow Joe on Twitter. It's St. Louis Cup of Joe. That's STL, and then Cup of Joe on Twitter. You know, I never met a guy named Joe who didn't reference Cup of Joe.
Really?
Well, no, of course.
I thought I was being creative with that one. I thought I was being creative with that name, but I guess not as creative as I thought.
You know, I don't mean to get a little how should I put this? A little naughty, but every time I think of a Cup of Joe, I wonder if somebody's been to a sperm bank or something.
Oh man.
Exactly.
That's not the thing that I was trying to get out of that name, but if people think that, then that's fine.
A cup of, obviously it's the coffee. Do you like coffee?
Yeah, I love coffee.
Oh,
Coffee's my cousin owns a coffee warehouse, and
Oh, nice.
and over the summers I've worked in there, and I've gotten really into coffee since working there because I can get pretty good deals on them, and it's vital for having to write, having to go to work, having to go to school, having to study, have to do everything, and coffee is a good thing to have.
You know, I like the smell of coffee, but I'm not a big fan of coffee. The taste of it. I'll go with my guilty pleasure will be like a brownie and a rum and coke. So.
Oh, that's fine too.
All right, let's talk a little St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Well, first off, one of the article that caught my attention that you wrote for, I think you wrote this on SB Nation, and it was the pace of picture. I can never say the word pitchers. The pace of pitchers. I almost want to say pictures. The pace of picture. There, I did it again. Anyways, talk a little bit about that article and who's the worst and who's the best, at least as far as teams go, because it seems like every time you turn on a Yankee Red Sox game on ESPN, because it's on like every night, I swear, it's always like, you know, the fifth inning and they're 4.5 hours into the game.
Yeah, in terms of who's the fastest and who's the slowest in terms of pitcher pace, well, Jonathan Papelbon is a closer. He might still be on the Phillies.
Yeah, he's on the Phillies. Yep.
Yeah, he used to pitch for the Red Sox and everything, but he's extremely slow. It's around 36 seconds in between pitches, and that's the highest or the longest in the majors. And then the fastest is Mark Burley, who I think he still pitches for Toronto.
Yep.
He's around 16 to 18 seconds between pitches. And the funny thing about that is he's the fastest, but there's actually a rule in the rule book for time between pitches with no runners on base, and that rule is 12 seconds. So it's obviously not enforced, because if you look at the times that it's taking between pitches, if the fastest guy is around 16 seconds and the slowest guy is around 35 seconds, then there's obviously a problem there, and that was the main premise behind me even writing the article in the first place.
Well, you know, the umpires out there, they don't know much of what's going on, and let alone that rule, I'm guessing. So one of the things at the end of your article is that you basically floated out there is, should there be a pitch clock in baseball? Well, what's your personal thoughts on that?
In my opinion, I do think there should be a pitch clock. Should it necessarily be 12 seconds like the current rule states? Probably not. But maybe like 15 to 18 seconds in that area would be a good start. And I guess that would just be from when the catcher gets the ball back to the pitcher, then he has 15 to 18 seconds to pitch it. And actually, the SEC for NCAA baseball, they actually already have a pitch clock, and they have kind of like a shot clock in basketball where you can see it at all times. It's out over the outfield wall, kind of next to the scoreboard, and it runs down from, I believe, 20 seconds. And from all reports that I've read, it's been successful in speeding up the pace of play in college baseball. So that's why I wrote the piece. I figured, why not at least try it in Major League Baseball, or start with the minor leagues, or start with spring training, or something like that, and work with it from there, because games are getting longer, and they're getting longer. And like you said, some games are 4 hours or longer. And of course, the baseball diehards are going to enjoy baseball, but if they want to expand the game to other people, then the game's going to have to shorten up a little bit.
Well, so what happens then if the shot clock, the pitcher clock runs out? Is it automatically a ball or something then?
Yeah, and that's how it is. That's how the rule is stated in the Major League rule book too. It's an automatic ball, and then I guess it starts back over again. So it's not a huge penalty. It's not like they're putting the person on base or anything, but having a ball awarded to the batter, I feel like that's a pretty reasonable a pretty reasonable punishment for delaying the game, and that's how the rule is in Major League Baseball. That's how the rule is in college baseball right now. It's just not enforced as well as it could be, in my opinion.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and this is an extreme case, but let's say you're inundated with mosquitoes on the mound, and you're trying to shoo off the mosquitoes, or your cleat needs to be tied, or whatever. I mean, at what point is it a discretionary call on the umpire if you're taking too much time, or maybe you need to adjust your equipment, if you know what I mean, and you need to go to the behind the mound to do that. I mean, at what point? It just seems to me that I don't know. I like the idea of speeding up a game because, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's terrible. With some of these guys, it just take forever, like Papelbon, and I think there was a Cleveland Indian pitcher that did the same thing here a couple of years ago. They just would take just like 40 seconds sometimes, and it was crazy. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's just like it can be kind of ridiculous if you're trying to hurry everybody along.
Yeah, I understand that, and I feel like there will be some discretionary decisions that have to be made by the umpire if there legitimately is a problem with bugs, which there has been. That's not that crazy. Like with Java Chamberlain, I believe in either Fenway Park or it might have been in Cleveland.
Yeah, it was in Cleveland.
Yeah, where he was just getting eaten alive out there. I could understand if the umpire was a little more lenient then, and I'm sure they could write a little, because if you look at the MLB rulebook, they have different stipulations for just about every single rule. So I'm sure they could write in something related to something like that. But in terms of adjusting equipment in all areas, some pitchers that would be a little more tough, because some pitchers would just go down and take their time doing whatever they're doing just on purpose.
Right.
So you can't just have like Rule 10B and be like, oh, if he's adjusting his equipment, then the shot clock doesn't matter. Well, then people are going to do that at all times. So, yeah, it would be pretty difficult, and if I ever have more time, which with only 24 hours in the day, I really don't, I'd like to be able to talk with the SEC officials and see how they've handled situations like that, because they've had it for the pitch clock for 3 or 4 years now, and I'm assuming that they've had some weird experiences about that. I'm sure they've had bug problems. I'm sure they've had maybe the pitcher's glove broke or something, or something legitimate, and I'm sure they've figured out how to deal with it. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if they don't want to go with the pitch clock itself, like having it in the stadium for everyone to see, but at least if they enforce it a little bit more than they have been, then pitchers, it'll start changing the attitude of a pitcher, and they're going to know that they're going to have to speed it up, because if they don't, they're going to be enforced. But right now, they're not afraid of it being enforced, because frankly, it's not.
Yeah, and that's the umpire's fault. Like a lot of stuff in baseball, the umpires could do this, but they choose not to because they're lazy, they're unionized, they can't be fired, and this is what we get. But that's another tirade for another day. And on my end, hey, we're speaking to Joe Schwarz. He's a writer for SB Nation and also the social media guy for Viva El Burdos. And you can follow him on Twitter at STL. That's STL is in St. Louis, and then Cup of Joe. STL, Cup of Joe. Let's talk some St. Louis Cardinals, because I've always been a Cardinal fan all of my life. My team is the Twins, and at this point they're dead to me because they just re-upped Ron Gardenhire on another 2-year deal. So I got to look elsewhere for some talent. And I love that St. Louis continues to develop players that kind of seemingly come out of nowhere. But first, I got to give you a little crap. About $15.5 million for Johnny Peralta. How's that working out for you?
Right now, it's not working out that well. He's having a little bit of trouble at the plate. His defense hasn't really been. We didn't expect much out of his defense, but it hasn't been real much of an issue. But when he's hitting around the 200 level or less, that's not ideal for the contract that he has.
What was your opinion of that signing? Were you a fan of that signing? I know when I heard about it, I was kind of shocked because St. Louis usually doesn't make at least what I view as a poor decision. What was your thought on it?
Well, I think what St. Louis, like you had alluded to earlier, how we are able to develop players. I believe they didn't want to get rid of one of those developed players to get a fix at shortstop. They didn't want to get rid of their young arms in the minor league system to improve at shortstop. In long run, if it doesn't work out, then you're like, oh, I really wish we had that guy back. And I realized that his overall contract over $50 million. I realize that's a lot of money, but the owners would rather eat that than have to trade away a young pitcher that ends up being Felix Hernandez or Chris Sale or even like a Michael Wacha for a shortstop. And if that doesn't work out, then they're going to just be kicking themselves forever. Whereas signing Peralta, he wasn't attached to a draft pick, which was nice, and all it required was money. Like, so yes, there was a lot of money, but there's really no strings attached to it other than money. And let's be honest, the owners of professional sports teams, does money really matter to them? I'd argue that it doesn't. They're all billionaires. And so I wasn't necessarily a big fan about it, but I could completely understand why they decided to sign him instead of trading for a shortstop or signing a shortstop like Stephen Drew, who's attached to a draft pick, because Stephen Drew might be a better value, but that draft pick could turn out to be the next Michael Wacha next year. So I understand it, wasn't very excited about it, but the Cardinals are a pretty intelligent organization, so I got to put my faith in them for that one.
You mentioned Michael Wacha. Do they call him? Is his nickname Pac-Man? And I'm being serious.
I have not heard that one
because when I say Michael Wacha, I think of Waka 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 what? And the Pac-Man sound, when he's eating the
yeah, that makes sense. But I actually have not heard that one before. You might be able to trademark that one before anyone else does. I don't know.
There you go. Namco, the publisher of Pac-Man, should call up Michael Wacha and get him to do some endorsements and bring Pac-Man back for another run, a la early, what was it? I guess the late 70s, early 80s. Hey, one of the things going on in the NL Central these days is the Milwaukee Brewers. And they're at the time we're recording this, they're doing pretty darn good. Sans Carlos Gomez going a little nuts every once in a while, but hey, that's who Carlos Gomez is. Do you think the Brewers are going to be able to hang on and be, because every year in Major League Baseball, there's a couple surprise teams in each league, and the Brewers may be that team this year. What are your thoughts?
Actually, before the season for Viva Albertos and for SB Nation, they asked us to rank the divisions, or to rank the teams in the divisions and where we thought they would end up. I actually have the Brewers finishing second behind the Cardinals.
Oh, nice.
It was pretty bold, I would say, at the time, but I'm a big Ryan Braun fan as a player. I don't like when he plays against the Cardinals and kills us. I don't like that he got caught for PEDs or whatever, but in terms of just on the field performance, I think he is an impact player. I think he's one of the best players in the league. And the fact that they got him back this year, and they got an Aramis Ramirez back this year, and the fact that their pitching staff was, as long as they don't have multiple injuries on their starting pitching staff, they should be fine as well. But the problem with them for longevity terms, like you were asking, is they don't have much in the farm to help them out in the long term. So if any guy gets injured for a long period of time, that's when you're going to see them falter a little bit. And they don't really have any help on the way. Whereas with the Cardinals, it seems like they have a ton of help in the farm system. They've got players that could probably play on a big league team right now. whereas the Brewers don't really have that. So if it's one of those one in a million where the team doesn't have an injury all season, the Brewers could be a real threat. But realistically, there's bound to be some injuries, especially with pitchers, considering every day you hear about a new pitcher injury. So I don't know. Like, I think they're talented. I think their top 20 players are pretty good, but that's about where their talent goes.
You mentioned the Cardinals minor league system, and it seems like, to me, for about the last 15 years, and I might be embellishing just a little bit, we've been hearing about Oscar Taveras. Is this the year where the kid's finally going to make an impact, or is it going to be another 2-3 years before we finally see if he can, well, honestly, at this point, shit or get off the pot?
I think this is the year that he'll finally make an appearance in the big leagues. When will that appearance be? I don't know. He's been struggling with his ankle health a little bit. He had a surgery. I forget which ankle, but he had one of his ankles surgically repaired last season and put him out for the rest of he missed over half the minor league season, and then he came back this year and he was doing all right in major league spring training, but he hurt his ankle again. So that immediately they sent him down and removed him from big league camp. And then just the other day, he hurt his other ankle. So I'm hoping it's nothing serious. I'm hoping it was just a precautionary move, that it doesn't turn into a season-long thing. But I've played sports before, and ankles are, if you injure them once, you tend to injure them over and over and over again. So I'm hoping that's not the case with him, because when he's healthy, he's proven he can be an MVP in the big leagues, and I truly mean that. But you have to be able to stay healthy in order to be an MVP. So do I think he comes up this year? Yes. Do I think the Cardinals want him to come up later so that they don't have to pay him the big dollars earlier? I think that might play a little bit of a role too, because the earlier he comes up is the closer he is to his free agency and closer he is to arbitration, and that's when the Cardinals are going to have to start paying the big bucks for him. So they're excited just like all of us, but they're businessmen just like all of us too. So they're gonna bring him up when they think it's right.
Yeah, that's
them and him.
That's one of the things that I think the players' union has gotten wrong, where the teams can keep the players down, and I don't think they're doing the players any favors, and the players may wash out because they stay in the minor leagues so long now. I point to way back when Harmon Killebrew came up with the Minnesota Twins when he was 19. These days, Harmon Killebrew probably wouldn't get a shot with the Twins or some of these other kind of frugal teams, one might say. Maybe the Cardinals are a little frugal when it comes to their minor leaguers, because, it's that whole thing, I don't want the clock to start ticking, and then Harmon Killebrew ends up turning into Bob Hamlin or somebody, a guy that nobody's ever heard of. Hey, we're hanging out with Joe Schwarz, and you can follow him on Twitter at St. Louis Cup of Joe. That's STL Cup of Joe. And you can read his stuff on SB Nation, one of the behemoths out there in the sports world, and Viva Albertos. A couple other questions here before we get out of here, and I appreciate the time. How are your Pacers looking? Are they going to make it to the finals this year?
The last game was nice. Well, the whole first half of the season, they looked like, bar none, the best team on the planet. They were blowing people out. Everyone on the team was scoring in double figures. And then the second half of the season happened, and crazily, it happened after they traded Danny Granger, who really wasn't doing much for the team, but apparently he was pretty big in the clubhouse, and they traded him and got Evan Turner from the 76ers. And what looked like on paper a great trade, it hasn't really worked out for him yet. So ideally they will win. By the time this episode airs, I hope that they're still in the playoffs.
Well, that would be something if they were upset by the Hawks, huh?
Yeah, that wouldn't be good if they lose to the Hawks. Matchup wise, the Hawks are a pretty tough matchup for the Pacers because they're small and quick, and the Pacers are more of a big, slow, create havoc type team. So matchup wise, it's not very good. But the Hawks just really aren't that good. They don't have much talent, or they don't have Pacers like talent. So I think they should be able to get past the Hawks, and because they were able to somehow still clinch the first seed, I think that makes them have a lot better chance at getting to the finals. And I really do think that this could be the year that they win it all, and they better hope so, because they have a lot of money tied up in Paul George. I have a lot of money tied up in Roy Hibbert, and at the end of the season, Lance Stevenson is going to be a free agent, and I don't know if money is going to be available to sign him. So it'd be nice if they were able to make one more run with Paul George, Roy Hibbert, and Lance Stevenson, because next year there's no promises that all three will be back.
I remember hearing the Danny Granger, Evan Turner deal, and I thought, what in the world are the Pacers thinking? I know Granger wasn't maybe playing that much, and I thought it was kind of a bad deal for the Pacers, but then everybody I talked to was like, no, this is a great deal for the Pacers. They get rid of Granger's contract, and they get Evan Turner, and obviously, as you mentioned, things kind of went down the toilet since then. And yeah, I mean, at this point, if you were to ask me, I don't think the Pacers can make the finals. I know you're rooting for them, but I don't see it at this point. So, anyways, I appreciate the time, buddy boy. You are the best, and thank you so much for being on the big show.
All right, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, let's wrap it up. Of course, you can find the show on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to the show via your handy-dandy iPhone or in the iTunes application on your PC or Mac, or in your iPad or iPod. There you go. Not too shabby. If you've got one of those new sexy HTC One, or maybe an S5 or an S4 from Samsung, you can download the app called Stitcher and subscribe to the show there, or you can download an app called Swell, which is a pretty swell app, if you ask me. So there you go. Make sure you swing on by Sportsnaut.com, the unfiltered sports juggernaut, for some more NBA, some more Major League Baseball, baby. Love me some Major League Baseball. And then also a little NFL action as the draft is coming up. Only a couple of days away from the draft. So the anticipation is a building, and we're covering it like basically an eagle, basically at probably about 6,500 feet, and seeing that mouse in the field, boom, we're hitting it hard at the Juggernaut. If you want to shoot me an email, it's tc@sportsnaut.com. And then, of course, you can follow me on Twitter. That's HeyTC on Twitter. Finally, once again, big thanks to Joe Schwarz for coming on the show. Of course, you can read his stuff at the behemoth called SB Nation, also on Viva Alberto's, and then you can follow him on Twitter. It's St. Louis Cup of Joe. Hey. That's SL. No, wait. Let me try that again. STL Cup of Joe on Twitter. Big show in the book. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the emergency room.
Yeah. Yo. Have you ever been hated or discriminated against? I have. I've been protested and demonstrated against.
And this looks like philosophy, so everybody gonna follow me, because we need a little philosophy without me.